Welcome in, everybody. My name is Delaney McWalters. I am marketing strategist here at Synergy Wellness Center, and I get to have really great conversations with different members of our community and our staff. And today, I'm honored to speak to Rob Bloom. Rob has recently joined our team as a clinician and works with both adults and adolescents. And Rob, I'll let you give a little more info on yourself.
Thank you. Yes, my name is Rob Bloom. I am a new clinician at Synergy. I'm working predominantly with children, adolescents, and families. Some adults here and there. But so a little bit about myself. I have been in the social work field for my entire career. And have had a number of different roles, from working with foster youth in residential settings to case management and child welfare and intensive in-home therapy, juvenile diversion, and now most recently a clinician at Synergy. So you can probably hear that I have a mixed bad background, and I feel like it's really helped me to kind of get to the place where I'm at now as a licensed clinician, and use my skills in the community here.
Yeah, absolutely. What is juvenile diversion? Is that what you said?
Sure. Yeah. So juvenile diversion is essentially court rehabilitation as opposed to punitive. So minors who were most likely usually first-time offenders, sometimes not, and working with them to get them assessed and get them services that they might need that usually might fall maybe through the cracks within the legal system just because it's not catered so much to mental health.
Got it. Interesting. There's so many different avenues for this work. It just fascinates me to hear about all the different types, all the different ways you can serve, I guess,
Yeah, and there really are a lot.
Yeah. So what kind of got you into this field in general? What made you want to go into social work and ultimately become a clinician?
So I grew up with a couple social workers, my mom and dad. So I think that had a big impact. We often were exposed to their work at times or sort of in their work environments often as a kid. So I think it kind of became just sort of a normal sort of setting for me to be within sort of environment where people are needing help or support or resources. So I think that's a big part of it. And then I went to college I was really wanted to play soccer. It was like my dream. And once I realized that maybe that wasn't going to pan out, after playing in college, I took a, typical story of I took like a sociology class and I got really interested in it and intrigued in it, and then just kind of started molding maybe that passion that I grew up with making it into a career. And so started working with in foster care at first. And I think after that, it was really just kind of a no-brainer for me that there was a lot of different ways that I could help. So if maybe this one didn't work out or that one didn't work out, then I would always be able to find something in this social work field, which I would say is pretty much ring true thus far.
Yeah, absolutely. Are your parents still with us?
They are, yeah. Thank you.
Do you guys do you talk shop? Or do they love the fact that you went into social work, or are they like, oh my God?
I think it's been a mix sometimes. Probably now I think they're very they've always been proud, but I think they can have a little bit more peace of mind now that I'm a little bit more established in my career. But I think at first they're kind of like, this is great, but also maybe worried that financially it's not the best path, as some people might say. But no, they're great. They've always been really supportive. I do think that they are happy that I've taken this route. And we do talk about things at times, and it's interesting because they come from a different era, and social work has changed a lot in certain ways. Some things are the same, but so it's cool. Yeah, we kind of have that to connect on.
Yeah, that's awesome. So tell me a little bit about your work with children in particular. I know you mentioned that you kind of started in the foster care world, I guess. And so what do you like about working with kids? What are some of the challenges? Like, how do you see that show up in your practice?
So yeah, in regards to working with kids, I think that again, it's something that I think came more normal to me growing up because my parents were working with kids. And so I think being around a lot of trauma, not necessarily my own trauma, but others, and being exposed to that at a younger age, just kind of made me connect more with kids, and seeing that some of the success stories maybe when I was younger, and the kids that my parents worked with, where they were really able to come out of some really bad situations, was inspiring. So I think when I look at my career now and that I work with a lot of kids, I think I see things through sort of like a trauma informed care lens a lot of the times. And not that adults aren't great, adults are amazing. But there is something about working with kids that is a bit different, and that there's a lot of more of their life to grow into, and their identity, and a lot of times learning kind of their story, and what they want their story maybe to be too as well. So yeah, it's definitely something that I am passionate about, because I do think that when children have someone to support them, even if it's just one person at times, it can make the big impact in their life.
Yeah, I imagine that, like you said, I mean, adults, obviously, there's a strong need for adult therapy in this world. But I think what I'm hearing you say is just that kids are so much more probably like malleable in a lot of ways, and like probably just like quicker to take to certain therapies or ways of seeing the world, or and the impact is probably stronger too, right? Because you're framing someone for the rest of their life, which of course you're doing with adults as well. But like, imagine if someone didn't get that therapy as a child, which we all know people that should have gotten therapy as a child, like just the impact that it can have for so many years, for potentially the rest of their lives. Like, I get what you're saying. Like, it just it's an opportunity to perhaps like course correct before it gets to a darker place.
Exactly. Yep, that's a good way to put it. I think too, it's hard for me personally to see anyone who struggles with making relationships, or just, like I said, even just having one person that you have a good relationship with in your life. And again, adults do need that help, especially ones that weren't given or taught those skills when they were younger. But yes, something about with kids is, it is a bit more malleable, and a bit more kind of like maybe the buy-in, or the belief is a little bit easier to get to sometimes. Those walls are still there, but maybe aren't as built up as we become adults, and some of those problems or just challenges we have get a little bit more solidified, I guess.
Yeah. What are some common issues, I guess, for lack of a better word, that you're seeing? I mean, I was born in the 90s, and my childhood looked a lot different than my nieces that are now 6 and 8, meaning like access to technology, how that impacts anxiety levels, just I just feel like there's a lot, the pressure that adults can put on kids to be, sports superstars or straight A students, or, some of that has always existed, but I'm just curious, as someone that's sort of tapped into the youth, what are some common themes that you see come up again and again?
I think that you kind of touched on a couple that are really relevant and big and sort of unprecedented in certain ways. Like as in everyone is sort of dealing with these things at the same time, which would be, I'd say like COVID or technology and problems with, say social anxiety from an impact like something like COVID, where, there's ages of young children who didn't get that socialization that they would have otherwise gotten. And, obviously mixing that in with tech and tablets and iPads and for, I think, a lot of kids that might not be an issue, and kids are really resilient. But there are so many that are clearly being impacted with not just those two things, but the things that sort of stem off from it. If we're spending all of our time on the tablet and we're not socializing, we're probably having some social skill deficits. We're not going to school because of COVID. Then there's some social skill deficits there, and maybe stress within the family, and it's kind of like a trickle effect. And so I think that anxiety is really kind of becoming more evident with the youth, and just the number of things that I think they're trying to manage. Exposure, obviously, in like social media and all these things on the news are big, sort of, I don't want to say pills to swallow, but kind of like big things to juggle for a small person, let alone an adult. So, and that's kind of where I feel like some of the unprecedented stuff comes in, because there are some of these generational differences, and I think those things can be tricky too sometimes for families, and like, say, parents understanding what the kids are going through. And that's probably always been the case in throughout the history of time, but I do see that a lot. Sort of this like disconnect with sort of the culture of what's going on with young kids today, and maybe someone my age or even older, and so on. And it's anxiety, and which obviously can lead to a lot of depression. And when we don't sort of have those social skills or coping skills, and we're not learning those by interacting with others, or have an environment where we can kind of explore thoughts and feelings, and be in a safe learning environment, essentially, I do think we start to see that impact in kids, in their unknowing, like, inability to, again, kind of just juggle all these things and kind of like categorize them. Why am I, breaking them down and being able to process things, which may come a little bit easier for an adult. So I see a lot of anxiety and depression and mood disorders too, because again, it's sort of one of those, there's deficits in kids learning skills to navigate some of, life's challenges, or maybe not having access to the resources, or, their parents not having the skills to pass them on. So probably reoccurring things that have always been going on, but I do feel like presently, there is more stress with parents I see too, and them feeling like, how do I, what am I supposed to say or tell them about this or that, when I can't even sort of grasp it.
I know. I think about that with like my nieces that like I said, I have one niece that's 6 and one that's 8, and they're hearing things about Gaza and Ukraine at school, whether it's from kids or teachers, or they're, wondering what all these red hats are about, and like these questions that are not only difficult conversations to navigate between adults, but to have to explain these things to kids and have them, and like you want to be like, regardless of where you lie on the political spectrum, like you want to communicate with your child in a way that they can understand, of course. And so yeah, it's just I didn't even think about COVID too, because just all of the impacts that had as well. And yeah, it's a hard time to be a kid.
Yeah, that's what I hear a lot of parents say. It's funny because, or not funny, but it's interesting because often the kids don't have that sort of awareness that, oh, well, this is how I feel because of COVID. That was just their normal. But y'all hear a lot of parents say, well, since COVID, this, or, this was going good, and then COVID happened. And it seems like it's just this thing for a lot of parents and families where it's sort of put this like just a big either stop to their life, kind of like this big pause and progressing in certain ways. And then just sort of the transitioning back, and everything that happened in between. So I think for another thing I forgot to mention was, I think for kids, transitions are such a big thing because of so many of the big things that are going on in the world, that just little day-to-day sort of transitions and helping them navigate like their routine, I see can be often a problem for a lot of kids. And not that it's an easy thing to do, whether you're a parent or a kid, like have a nice, healthy routine, but you do see a lot of kind of non-routine going on, and whether that's because of COVID or just other things going on, that seems to just be a kind of a big reoccurring issue that I see. Just kind of disorganized.
Yeah. What would you say to a parent that's kind of on the fence about whether or not their kid, quote unquote, like needs therapy, like whether, like if they can't really decide or distinguish between like, this is a parenting issue that I need to solve at home versus like I need to get some outside help with this? Like, how do you I guess, like, what would you say to a parent that's struggling with that decision?
I would tell them, or maybe suggest that they meet with someone just to do like a consult, because often, a lot of times too, parenting and children's behavior, or whatever concerns with behavior or mental health, are often connected in some way. And so, and personally in my role, I don't think I said this before, but I'm also really passionate about co-parenting and how divorce impacts kids and families. And so, I would just help them navigate, maybe talking to someone, like a professional, whether it be a mental health counselor or a parenting professional, and getting a little feedback maybe, because both might be helpful. Maybe counseling for their child, or therapy for their child, and maybe also for them in a way as a support to, their life as a parent. But I would suggest they see and maybe meet with someone and see how that feels. Because then there's also, it's kind of like a doctor, sometimes you go to a new doctor and you're like, oh, this person's really great. Okay, cool. Like this is going to be awesome. You don't think twice about it. I feel like with mental health, there's a little bit more taboo and a little more stigma on it, where it is a little bit uncomfortable maybe to talk to someone at first, especially a stranger, about these things. I think medical stuff, we've become a little bit more just comfortable with being okay, I feel this way. I can scale it, 0 to 10. So I think in mental health, we try to do sort of the same thing in that first appointment. Like if I was being consulting with this mom or dad about what next steps they want to take, I might sort of treat it like that, as sort of like a medical appointment and just getting a gauge. But I do think parents have to be comfortable with that person too. And so further, I guess, if they didn't feel good maybe the first time or something rubbed them the wrong way, maybe meeting with another person too wouldn't hurt, just because it could be a lot different, just different styles and things like that. So I would just encourage them to be open-minded, and also just help them maybe normalize their feelings about not knowing what to do, because I think everyone feels that way. Some people are a little bit more comfortable expressing it than others, and I think that's why therapy is such an important thing, is because whether you are or you aren't, it gives you that place to come talk about your thoughts and feelings and not worry about being judged, having bias against you, because we're all, I can speak for myself, and the testimony of others, that a lot of us walk around and we often worry about what others think about us and how we're perceived. And so, again, therapy is a good platform to just be like, okay, I don't have to worry about this or that. I can come here and get this out and maybe feel a little bit better when I leave, as opposed to when I came in.
Yeah. And I think that's a common thing that I've heard in the parenting community as well. They almost feel like, the parents that I know almost feel like it might be a moral failing on their part if they have to bring their kid to a therapist. And it's well, first of all, if there's one thing that I've learned, it's that a lot more people are in therapy and have their kids in therapy than are willing to admit or whatever. Then, not that I want to further the stigma, because I absolutely don't feel that way, but just that it's happening, whether or not people talk about it. And also, I think putting those feelings aside for the greater good of your child as well, and being I am a parent, but I'm also a human being that does not have all of the answers. And why wouldn't I tap into a resource like Synergy or other mental health practices that have people that are literally trained in helping kids like mine? I think, I'm preaching to the choir here, but I think it's oftentimes parents are just so quick to judge themselves for all the things, and this is one of them.
Yep, that's very true. There's a lot of societal pressure as a parent, and and there's vast differences between being a mom and a dad, and I see a lot of, but on both ends. But for example, a lot of moms who put an enormous amount of pressure on themselves, or on the flip side, or dads who might feel like they're not supposed to, they might struggle with their own emotions and their own expressing, because we have grown up in a society, and maybe there's been progress, but we all know that, especially now, that we live in a patriarchal society. And so I think a big responsibility that I take too is especially when I get young men or young boys, that they understand that these types of things are so important, and that it might not be something that resonates with them anytime soon, but you will grow up and get bigger, and you need to know how to express yourself and process things and deal with things in a way where you're not being aggressive and you're not violent, or you're not scaring people or intimidating or just playing into maybe some of the things that society is allowed to carry on, and which are challenges for some more than others. But I take that also as kind of just a personal sort of responsibility of mine, because I think my dad did a really good job, even though his dad was definitely not a emotional, intelligent person. And I think my dad had a hard time with his dad. And again, growing up in a different time, but I think my dad did a really good job of trying to kind of mind that gap. And he has his own challenges because of the way he was raised, but I think he did a good job at least being like, you know what, always make an effort to do this, because it's just as important as, say, working out your body, working out your muscles. I tell kids too, and parents, that like working out your brain and your emotions is like the same thing. You have to practice it and stretch it, and it has to get stronger, and you have to sometimes get hurt or injured, so yeah, now I'm rambling, but I'm not sure how I got there.
No, it makes a lot of sense. And I think, yeah, I just remember at Synergy in particular during COVID, our wait list for kids was very, very, very long, and alarmingly long. And so I know that there's a lot of need out there, and I'm really glad that you've been able to join the team.
Too. Oh, and you know what, I there was a thing I was gonna try to tie in there, and then I got lost. But as I do, you were just saying like wait lists, and parents. There are so many parents that do have their kids in therapy, and it is interesting to see sort of there's a side of the parents, kind of like you mentioned, where they're like, it's more, I don't want to say secretive, but it's private. They don't want it to be something that is public knowledge for whatever reason. And that's their choice, right? That's absolutely their right. And then I see this kind of rise too on the other end of parents who are like, I have my kid in therapy, and they're very like proud of it. And so I think there's, again, like most things, there's this spectrum, and we struggle to find sort of like a middle ground. Hopefully we'll get more there, to where it's a little more balanced. But I am glad at least to see some parents that are like, hey, this is why we're here, like, because we don't know what to do about A, B, and C, and we want to get help. And no matter if it's that type of approach, or a parent who's like, hey, this is very private to us, I will always just give them positive feedback and say that it's awesome that it takes a courage and bravery to, to do this type of thing and to get help and to be honest with yourself. And so no matter where you stand on it, you're doing a good job if you're trying to get help and just make yours or your kid's life better or healthier in some way.
Yeah, absolutely. Shame can't live in the dark, I think, is a quote from somebody at some point. So well, thank you for joining me today, Rob. And excited for you to be a part of the team. If folks are interested in learning more about Rob's background, they can find out that information on the Synergy website. And if you're interested in getting yourself or your child into therapy, working with Rob or another member of our team, our therapy page of our website is a great resource and has a little place for you to fill out our questionnaire. So yeah, any closing thoughts?
Thank you for chatting with me, and yeah, I hope to see new people within our community and surrounding communities, and just look forward to the future here at Synergy. And yeah, that's about it.
All right. Rob.
Thank you.